Hey, beloved. Welcome to episode 58 of your Cosmic Mama podcast. I'm your hostess, Andy Murphy. And inside, we're going to be talking to my sweet friend, my soul sister, my longtime love of this and many lifetimes, Sabrina Perez. And Sabrina and I were way overdue for a conversation. The curanderas have this lovely term called the platica. And in a platica, it's a heart-to-heart conversation. It's that conversation that heals. Did I need a conversation that heals? Because in this turn, kind of into the new year, kind of, just into January, it's been a lot. And I'm cautious. I already overshared in the last two podcasts, didn't I? And I overshare, and then I feel embarrassed. Hey, ego. But I also show up pretty authentic, and I want you to recognize that, like, the journey of this, the journey of the healing, the authenticity is what matters, the sincerity of how you participate here. So in our conversation today with Sabrina, oh my God, we had so many things to catch up on. We met way back in the Spirit Guides magazine days. Do you remember that? Do you go that far back with us? Back in those days where we were unknowingly preparing for what we've been walking now. I don't want to say the early days of ascension, but for a lot of you, the early days of awakening and of trying to find places to come together. Well, Sabrina and I were fortunate enough to find ourselves and each other again in this life. And after a couple of years of falling out of touch, Activate, our Akashic Mystery School, brought us back together. Thoth brought us back together, as he does. And inside, we're going to cover lots of things. We had no agenda for this conversation. We had love. And she shared so many nuggets from her Mayan and Aztec memories and lifetimes and ancestry. She kind of opens the conversation with this idea of flow, don't seek. Fuck yeah. And she really gave lots of keys of how to move out of the fear. In that moving out of the fear, we'll also cover some things that might be a little controversial to some. I can't imagine that if you're here, anything that we say is controversial at this point. Goodness me. But Graham Hancock, check. Yes, let's talk. Matthias de Stefano, oh yes. So we'll be catching up on several things with you inside. And our love of trees. Because one of my trees went down recently. Well, maybe a couple. And it wasn't until this conversation with Sabrina that I really understood what was going on with my trees and my friends and my loves. So as we begin today, we're going to open up some sacred space. This is how we like to start here. So please just allow yourself to step out of the everyday into these sacred spaces of you. Inviting in the sacred that's everywhere all the time. Breathing deeply into the expansion of your essence, out of your to-do list. As you align yourself with the divine, as we breathe into the all that is, and for whatever might be ailing or bothering you now, ask for something in this conversation to be exactly the medicine that you need. To be an answer to your prayers, an affirmation, a blessing that gives you the courage to continue bringing more of yourself to the world. Ooh, doesn't that feel better? Isn't it amazing what just a few moments will do? So without further ado, you ready to do this? Light a bowl, light a joint, light a candle, get some fire going, get some warmth in your body as we get into episode number 58 of your Cosmic Mama podcast. Angsa.
Angsa.
Yeah. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, Andy.
Whenever I think of some of my favorite people on the planet, you're always on that short list. And there's always the desire for me of like, I just want to talk to Sabrina. So I think that is kind of what we're engaging in here today is you want to catch us up with, I don't know if it's where you've been, talk to me about your awakening. Let's start there. Where,
Yeah,
what class of are you?
lovely way to frame it. It's funny because as you go through your awakening, you're like, oh, I'm going through my awakening, and then you realize how thick those onion layers are. And they're thick, and they aren't easy to remove. But when they are, you're like, oh, this is a whole deep, different level of awakening.
Well, and as you were
Um,
talking, what I saw was not even a layer of an onion, but instead like a stratosphere of reality.
that's
That's
exactly it. It's
okay. And
and
then,
that's where that's where this journey has taken me, is a completely different um, angle of reality. I guess is the best way to put it. Like I'm visualizing existence at a different angle of reality. So it's an interesting place to be. Um, and it's one of those places where you have to tread lightly, like of it. But I'm not going to today. Just filters off. We will go deep.
well, and let's just recognize anyone who is listening, like you vibe with this, you get it. So yeah, we don't need any filters on this. We celebrate each destruction of layer,
Yeah.
right? Because it
Yes.
really does bring us into uncharted terrain.
Oh, completely. And you wonder, am I here alone? I get this visual of like just Sabrina in the middle of Antarctica, like I get this visual sometimes, but then I realize, like, if you look at some of the terrain in Antarctica, it looks very empty. But if you look closer, there's thousands of penguins there. So you're not alone. You're just hanging out with penguins, and other things. There's microorganisms that live there. You're not alone just in the physical sense of the world, but of the word, but you're also not alone on the spiritual sense of the word. You're covered and surrounded by beings that are there for you. So it can be scary and it can feel
Hold on, would you tell us
isolating.
about the first time you had an encounter with one of those beings who was always there with you?
Yeah, it's gosh, it keeps shifting, but when it first started, it was very ancestral. So I think that was the best way for my awakening to kick off, was a more of an ancestral connection to this earth, which is what we need so that we can stay grounded. But also, it's more gentle than, say, a cosmic being who pops in and says hello. So for me, it was like a very ancestral Aztec female experience. This being came through, and she was. And at the time, I had no idea what I was doing, and I started dabbling in chaos magic, which I would definitely.
I fucking love
You
that
have
that's
your
a
own
starting point
journeys,
for anyone.
but
I'm gonna start with chaos
maybe
magic. Huh, okay.
maybe not. But my journey was very, I was very in a very dark space, and I was very punk rock, goth, dark, and just trying to find flecks of reality outside of my current dark drab existence. I didn't understand how colorful everything was around me because I couldn't see it. And so I thought the best way forward would be to like go through like some hermetic teachings and then like pop into some chaos magic. And that's probably not, I highly recommend against that. I highly recommend you just flow with what your intuition tells you and not seek. That's the key here, is I was seeking. I was
Mm,
seeking and seeking. And that's kind of the beginnings of your awakening, is to seek, to search, to Google, to Google, to Google. And that can lead you into some interesting places, all learning journeys, but maybe you might want to avoid some of them, like chaos magic. That said, what came through was kind of scary, and I thought at the time that it was because of the chaos magic. But then what I realized was the story of this sort of beautiful moon goddess that came through, that was from the Aztec kind of pantheon,
mm.
had gone through so much trauma in her existence, that was kind of what was coming through. And it was the first time I put like an actual um, feminine energy on my altar. I hadn't put any masculine or feminine energy on my altar. And so it sort of kicked off the understanding of the balance of masculine and feminine, and how important it is, just like in our own inner universe. Not just our outward universe, but our inner universe. So yeah, she came in and she was traumatized. She was traumatic. It was Coilshalti, which is this moon goddess. And the story is, I'll tell it really quickly. She warned her mother of the birth of Huitzilopochtli, who is the war god of the Aztec pantheon. I believe he's also the sun, but he's the warrior, and he's visualized as the hummingbird. She warned him of that the mother should kill him because he is going to bring war, and he literally cut forth himself from the womb and removed her arms and her legs and her head. And he tossed her body parts down to the bottom of her altar, her pyramid. She has her own pyramid in Mexico. And he tossed her head up into the sky so her mother would be able to see her as the moon. So she became the moon that way. And I hope I didn't butcher that story. I'm pretty sure that's pretty clearly what it is, and it's just a sad kind
Your
of
use of the word
traumatic.
butcher, I think, is also really
I know, no pun intended, but it was a butchery. It was a butchering. It was a traumatic goddess that came through, and that it actually many years now past. Now it's interesting how these layers have their own trauma attached to them as they unfold, and there's reasons for them. There's reasons that these entities come through to us, and not all of them are pure, but that's not something to be afraid of. It's something to understand why they come through at the times in our lives and at the levels that they're at. And so she just came through to open my mind to reconnecting to the Aztec aspect of my existence,
cool.
which I had literally at that point never gone into Aztec or Mayan anything. And now that's deeply part of the magic I work with now. It's very important to me. So it's crazy how this just happened. That she came through during a deep meditation. I was doing like a candle meditation, and that was in 2018,
Okay.
and it led me on quite an intense journey.
I mean,
Um,
if that's where we begin, is with a child cutting its way out and butchering. Uh huh.
yeah,
Uh huh.
yeah.
Would you tell us a little bit as you talk about her? I have no context, so let me just say that I don't have any Aztec memories or and I haven't studied. So, to throw her head up feels like to have no body and to throw her head up feels like such a lunar experience of things of like you're not grounded to anything but you might be able to see and perceive but like it's that
Mhm.
reflection, it's not true of anything. That feels like the most lunar goddess story that I've ever
Yeah.
heard in my own experience with the moon.
And you can imagine too the emotion, how intense the emotions then flow from each phase of like, see me now, I'm here when I'm full, and then now I'm not being seen as I flow away. So the Aztec pantheon is
Wow.
yeah,
Well,
I
and
know,
we're talking about this on a Cancer moon, so
I
we've got that
know.
going with us.
Perfect.
Hmm. Hmm.
I know, I just got chills on that. And
Tell me her name
it's
again so that we can honor her.
Coil Shalki.
Thank you.
Coil Shalki.
Yeah, I'll let you send that to me later so we spell
I
it.
won't spell it because it's even more confusing. But she deserves to be remembered and to be loved. The Aztec pantheon is very bloody, as opposed to the Mayan pantheon, which is beautiful and wise and it's like just so deeply rooted into the cosmic and mathematical ways of the world. Whereas the Aztec, there's
It's
gods
earthy.
that are very earthy, and so you get that energy
Huh.
of like man.
Yeah, brutality to it, like the
Mhm.
brutality of Earth versus the enlightenment of Maya that does go
Mm,
very cosmic and huh.
mhm. It's really interesting, and it kind of um, flows with. And this is why it's a good beginning step for an awakening in a way, because this is kind of how the onions work. This is a really great metaphor of understanding. We get these stories told to us. These stories are told to us about our past. And they then create these people that worship these gods that are very brutal and warlike. Um, but these but but as you dig deeper, you recognize that past those people, these foundations were founded, these civilizations were founded previously by by mentors and teachers, giants, avians that came through, and this is where the Mayan knowledge comes from. Um, and so it's like these are just surface level understandings of these monuments. Even Egypt has that deeper, like you go back to Ken, and then you can go back even previously from Ken to the very beginnings of the Sphinx being built.
Well, and it's
And
like that
so,
idea that I know Robert Edward Grant talked about this recently, and it's like when somebody asks you, like, what do you do? Right? I know that I always have that moment where I'm like, I don't know how much can you hit, like what's the thing that's gonna allow you to like understand or grasp like who I am. And so with those cultures as well, like we can't understand all of the complexities and subtleties and the history of it. We just might have the most recent layer of it of
mhm,
like the Aztecs are a warring tribe of
mhm,
Mexico, right? Like
mhm,
it's pretty dismissive and pretty base level.
yeah, it is. And I think that's why we're in an interesting space right now with like the Graham Hancock series, right? A lot of people are a little up in arms about just sort of he's dismissing the native aspects of these beautiful sites, right? But that's not true. He's just expressing the deeper layers of where these sites came from, because many of these sites have been around for many thousands of years, longer than even we can remember. And so
And isn't that the
he's
beauty of
just
Graham's work?
celebrating.
Like
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to help us remember something that has been forgotten.
Something has been
I
forgotten.
haven't paid attention to any of the controversy. I'll just say like there is usually at least one device in my house that's running the series, even if I'm not watching, just so we keep it on the top for Netflix. Where like, this
Mm-hmm.
is what I want. We need more of this. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's I normally don't delve into controversy, but I found this controversy very like interesting because I am all forever an optimist about humanity's shift into like a better vibration. And so I really find that the controversy is actually causing question.
Ooh.
And when we start to question our beginnings, then that's when we know we actually are in a good space. Like it's a good indicator, like controversies aside, or any kind of like paranormal weirdness aside, the fact that people are like, no, this makes sense, and I feel that this makes sense, which is really that gnosis of like, yes, yes, this has been here for a reason, and we were capturing these stars for a reason because we were not technologically advanced, but we were advanced enough to know that something big was coming, and we needed to leave these reminders for people that this was happening, and that happened 12,000 years ago. Like we can't dismiss that we had that knowledge just because we don't want to hurt the native folk that moved into that region and worshipped and loved it and kept that story alive.
Mm.
It's not
Not the
that's not the
story.
point. We have to keep reaching further back to remember our roots so that we can shift how, you know, from like everything from like how we raise up our children even needs to shift.
Oh yes.
So, and we can't make that shift if we keep telling the same
No, I think it's
stories.
lovely the way, like, as you talk about it, the controversy of it, it's getting people to engage. It's inviting a conversation. It's allowing us to probe and look and see. And it feels interesting, right? Because obviously with COVID, like there was lots of like harder conversations because we didn't really know who and what we were. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
the conversations that are being had around this, it's less ideological and it is like poking and prodding something, as you said, it's a gnosis, it's a memory of
Mm-hmm.
whenever I listen to Mateus De Stefano, that's not knowledge that I have, but I listen and I'm like, fuck yeah, I remember that. Okay, it feels. And so for
Feels
us
like.
to be finding these things and engaging in ways that are provoking the feel of things and the inner
Mm-hmm.
knowing, Oh, that's a pretty cool place to be.
That's why, you know, I just saw Avatar 2 recently, and the first Avatar I rewatched because I hadn't watched it probably since it came out.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this 3 hour movie. Because I just remember I enjoyed it, but I wasn't awake at the time that I watched it and enjoyed it. So this is me going back and watching Avatar as awakened and understanding like how important it is for all of us to get back connected to the earth. And so I watched it, and if you've not watched the first Avatar, I'm going to probably spoiler alert: the big tree comes down. It's been some years. You should probably watch it. Um, and the first this is probably the first time where the gnosis of this experience actually happening came through to me so deeply that I was just racked with such grief because I'm so connected to trees right now that like it was such grief to see something destroyed in this manner that I was like, these are cellular memories that came through as this beautiful story. These are cellular memories that have been passed on. And this is how these stories get passed on, and we can't forget. That's why a lot of cosmic people who follow the beautiful connection to the cosmic beings that are here in support of us say Star Wars is a cellular memory and a story that happened of a war past. It's true. And like that, that reality that we feel, it's such a, you wonder like, why was I so deeply affected by these moments and these cinematic stories that come through? And it's because there are these memories reminding us of where we're from, where we come from, of many lifetimes that we've lived where we've experienced this sort of destruction.
There's so many pieces of what you just said that like I just want to expand. First off, I am personally grieving two trees right now. And so deeply, and it's such, I can't even comprehend why I'm grieving these trees so much. What I will say of one of them is as he was taken down unceremoniously and unexpectedly, like I've spent a year with this tree. I know him. I love him. He's my Saturn tree. We have a very intimate relation. Not that intimate, but kind of
But
like,
no, kind of.
kind of.
When you ground into it, it's very intimate.
And as he has come down, he said to me, he's like, I've taken all of your wishes and like they are noted and they're being enacted. You have space for new dreams now. And
Wow.
he's also thanked me like no other human had a relationship with me like this. And I grieve that no other human will. Like, yeah, I'm grieving
The,
trees right now in a
the
very
trees, the trees
profound
are,
way.
I don't know how many people are connecting, and I'm sure that there's many of you who are listening that are connecting in the same way we are with trees, but the trees right now are so loud. They are so loud. And the reason that they're so loud and the mycelial network that
That's what I
connects
was
them
just
is
gonna
so
say.
loud.
Like they're earth mushrooms, is what the
They
trees are,
are,
right?
because they are our, we are symbiotically connected to these trees. We wouldn't survive without them, and they wouldn't survive without us, right? So they, just like we find joy in our children laughing and in just playing fetch with our dogs and petting our cats as they purr, the trees find that same joy in us interacting with them. They love us to touch them. They love us to talk to them. I know I'm getting
I
like,
don't
I
know
love my
this,
trees.
Sabrina. Like I
No,
know
it's
this.
very
I don't.
true. I sit with trees. So that's what I do. I sing to trees and I sing their stories.
As this
And
one
I'm
went
so
down,
grateful.
it's a quad of four of them. And as this one went down, it's just the three that are still there. And I sang to it and I gave offerings and like, yeah.
The first time a tree got taken from me, and I say that because it, I was renting a home, and this just happened last year, actually. I was renting a home, and um, it was just after spring. So it's probably, I would say it's April at this time. And the like note was left on my door, like, we've sprayed your tree. And I'm like, okay, don't water it. And I was like, great, pesticides. Like I need that. You know, that was like my
Urgh.
myself, my annoyed self, my very human side. Like, great, now I can't let my kids play out there. Like, what are
Yeah.
they doing to these poor trees? And then I'd say a month later, they came by while I was at work and they just chopped the tree down. And I was in love with this tree. And I was like, you can't just, how
Yeah.
can you? It was like
How?
the most shocking experience. And
It's
that's when I knew,
violating.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like the breath had been taken from me. And I was like, oh, I have a very deep connection with trees. I didn't realize until that happened that I needed to get to know the city trees because we walk past them every day and we don't say, hey, how's it going? And so I just touch a tree I mean, I'll just 5 trees in a row, like, hello, 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 hello. Just because who knows how long they've been sitting there, you know, dogs peeing on them, like
Yeah.
just hanging out and like they don't mind, but nobody's ever said, hey, how's it going? You know? So I was grateful to move to an area. When I came back, I went to Mexico this year or last year. And when I came back, I was grateful to move to an area where I would have never in my life imagined that in this area of the South Bay of California that there would be so many trees here. Like I'm just in awe of how many trees there are in the city. So we go on just city walks and we're just surrounded by some of the oldest trees. Like the root networks of these trees are so massive that like entire there's redwoods. I was driving through Burlingame and there's redwoods on this one street that are their root network is so big that like they've overtaken the sidewalk and they're growing into the
Yeah,
road.
babies, do it. Love it.
There's the redwoods and there eucalyptus, and eucalyptus, of course, can grow so tall. So, it's just incredible to know now my trees. Like the trees are
And can I tell
beautiful.
you the first time that I got to, not to Santa Cruz, the first time I flew into San Jose, um, I'd rented a car and I really had to stop because the trees and the plants were so loud that I'm like, I can't just keep driving. And I was like, literally like trying to get, I think to the Rosicrucian Museum. That was my first stop when I got there, of course. But the neighborhood, like everything was so lush. I was stopping in neighborhoods and I would like stop and I'd get out and I'd talk to the trees and I'd take pictures and I'd get back in and keep driving.
No, it's when I got back from Mexico, I was called to stay here. And when I was called to stay here, I was like, why am I staying in South Bay? Like, why can't I be like in Los Gatos Hills in the Redwoods or in Santa Cruz? Like, but what we have to recognize is we hold a vibration. We all, as we awaken, our vibration grows, it builds, right? And that's literally all we need to do to serve. To serve this planet, to serve Gaia, is to hold a vibration. We need not do nothing. We need to do nothing else. We don't need to heal, to be a healer. That's a beautiful journey, but don't come down on yourself if you're not finding that thing, because literally to just sit and exist in a high vibration and know of who you are, that's all we need to do. Imagine all of us. If one person sits in their knowingness in the middle of the Silicon Valley, 1,000 people around that one person is affected in that vibration. So imagine if all of us just sat in our knowingness in Silicon Valley, where all the technology is being formed. Imagine what that can shift to, you
Well, and
know?
as you say it, right? Because the tree network, the root network of the trees, the mycelial network, and the network
Mm-hmm.
that they create, we as humans, we are creating those same networks through our
Yes,
frequency and through our, I think the healing and the clearing is one piece of it, but it's not to,
definitely.
your job is not to fucking heal it. Can we, I had to remind myself of
No,
that earlier in the bath. Like, my job is not to heal. That's
no.
happening on its own.
You know, it's funny whenever I do ritual with mushroom, and I'm so in gratitude that that even exists. But when I do, it always comes through to me strongly before like I get really deep into my connection with mushroom. Hollow bone always comes through because that's what we are. We are channels. We are not healers. We are channels to flow the energy through because they just need that energy to come through in some way, and we assist in flowing it through. Whether it's just sitting under a tree in the middle of Silicon Valley, we're healing. We're healing in that respect of just sitting, or whether it's going off and doing some beautiful Reiki work on somebody who needs it and is called to you for it, or going into your Akash and helping you to understand something that you're just coming up against the wall on. Like all of these are beautiful things, but one thing I had to really teach, like not teach myself, but like surrender to is I am not one who's called to service in a traditional sense. I am called to service in and being with my trees and digging my hands into the soil. That's how I'm called to service and to remind myself to ground because I'm often floaty and I have to like pull my soul back down and dig my soul into the soil.
We're here
Like, we got to
for.
be here. This is what we're
Um,
here for.
I want to come full circle. There's a Star Wars piece. We might get back to that. But I want to come full circle with this beautiful Aztec goddess that you worked with, who obviously had to pull herself down to the earth, just as you're saying as well,
Mhm.
to remember how to be human. These Aztecs who really were like kind of one stratosphere of humanness. What was your time in Mexico like? I haven't talked to you about.
I know.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to preface this with sacred union is not easy. So all of us are searching for sacred union, which is a beautiful thing. But sacred union is not easy, especially when you surrender. But surrendering is beautiful. And what I did was I surrendered and sold everything that I owned, including my favorite car in the whole entire world. I had a Subaru WRX and I loved it. It was fast.
Oh, and you
It was
love
a five,
cars. I forget that about Sabrina.
and I love
Loves all
cars.
those cars.
Yes,
Yep.
I'm totally a car girl. My dad um, had lowriders growing up, so I'm definitely a car girl. So I sold everything. Um, and I sold everything because I had to get down to nothing to rebuild anew. And I didn't realize that.
Mm.
I'm a big follower of the guides, student of the guides, and I love Paul Selig. And he always says, after you raise yourself up to the high room or the higher vibration, he always says, "Behold, I make all things new." And I love that saying because we can every morning we have the capability to make all things new every single morning that we open our eyes. And so I had to get down to nothing to get to Mexico with nothing. And this journey for all of us collectively has been one of surrendering to the idea of fear and releasing it. We have to transmute this concept of fear of death,
Yep.
fear of catching a disease, fear of not being seen, fear of not being heard. What we're doing is we're allowing the fear to run rampant and we're getting louder and louder, like, you have to see me for who I am. And the reality is we need to release and transmute it and be okay with who we are and no longer being afraid of not being seen, and that's a hard thing for us because we
I
feel
just
so
need you to
alone.
pause right there because, like, yeah, if I had you in my head 2 days ago, like Sabrina, that's all I probably fucking needed to be reminded of.
Yeah.
And the fear, I feel like I do a pretty good job transmuting lots of fear, but somehow whenever I'll mark that
When
in.
it turns inward, this is something that I had to work deeply on in Mexico. One thing that happened in Mexico, I was called there, and I was called to the jungle side of Mexico. So I was called to Quintana Roo, which is like on the Caribbean Ocean, the Caribbean side, and I was called to Playa del Carmen and Tulum, and I was also called to Valladolid, which is just this beautiful little town. And I went to Chichen Itza. I was really called to the cenotes. So just part of my star map of my Mayan connection is I walk the path of Xibalba, which is the underground. And that's a whole thing. We can do like a whole segment on just like that if we wanted to. Um, but but the cenotes are like pathways to the underground, so it's a really good way for me to like meditate and get into like kind of like that womb-like state. So I probably went to like 15 cenotes just because I was in love with them.
Ikalam, did you make it to those cenotes there?
Yes, I did, and they're
Gonna make it to
amazing.
the cenotes. I made it. I made it to the jaguar head, and I was like, yeah, my hands get sweaty. Like there's so much to remember there that I need. I would like more hands-on.
I definitely I feel like I need to like spend a year there. I feel like I need to go back, but we have to just I surrender to where I'm called to.
Mhm.
I literally don't this is you want to ask what layer of ascension I'm at right now. I don't make plans. I'm like if it happens, it happens. I will pencil it in,
Lovely.
but I can't I literally because you never know. You
Never.
don't know what's going maybe I'm not supposed to do that one thing and I have to be okay with it. And so anyhow, I get to Mexico. I've sold everything. It's me, my sacred union partner, and my 1.5 year old daughter. Which, yeah, they're like, let's just go traveling in Mexico
And
with the
beloved
daughter
speaks
and no
Spanish
car.
as well?
Pardon?
Does your beloved speak Spanish as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So it wasn't like we were diving in and
Yeah.
didn't know what we were doing or where we were going. It was perfect. He's Peruvian. So anyhow, we get there and we sold everything, so we had nothing except for a suitcase, and it was amazing. It was probably the best experience I've ever had. But what it was me realizing how powerful I am as a being. Okay, so and I'll explain it this way. Um, I believe in total sovereignty of my existence. I am sovereign and you can't tell me what I can and can't do, period. And I live in my truth of that. It has nothing to do with conspiracy. I just, if I want to do it and it feels right to me, I'm going to do it. And if I don't want to do it and it feels right to me, I'm just not going to do it. And it has nothing to do with any kind of study or research or anything. That's just how I am. And so part of that to me is I just can't stand masks. It like I feel like I'm going to strangle to death if I have to put a mask on. So if you want to ask the amount of mask time I've spent these last few years, very minimal. And leading up to going on this trip, I knew that I would have to wear a mask not only in the airport, but like for the 5 hours of the flight. And then once I get off, I'm going to have to be masked up. But I was called so deeply to this that I was like, are you sure? Like, what the heck? And I just had to surrender to it and sold everything, got out of my lease was up, moved in with my folks. Everything was worked out fine. I had like about a month then of just like, okay, I'm gonna take off. And
And quit job
um,
too? That's
no, I worked because I can work wherever.
amazing. Okay.
I can work wherever I want, which is, I'm blessed with that. So thank you, universe. So get there, get to the airport, and that literally the day before they lifted the ban on wearing masks at the airports in the United States. And I was like, awesome. So ban lifted, don't have to wear a mask, get all the way to Mexico. I know it's not that case there. Like 3 days in, the state of Quintana Roo lifts their ban of masks. I was like, yes, I'm supposed to be here. As silly as that sounds, like it's really a vibration that you elevate to. And what a mask can create is like you're not able to really connect on a physical level. It's a barrier, and it's a barrier based in fear. Like now I'm afraid to talk to you and say hello to you and ask you how your day is as my neighbor because you might give me something that I'm afraid of.
It
And
creates
that will,
separation and
it's
distrust.
a deep separation and mistrust. And I'm so grateful that it got lifted because Mexicans do not have that. They love to talk. They will just touch your baby and goo goo gaga your baby. They don't care. And it's the best thing ever. And they're just talking to my baby in Spanish and she's giggling. And people just aren't, there's no barriers to like
Warmth.
humanness and connection and warmth there. And so it was so refreshing for me coming from like people like not afraid to talk to me on the path and like masking up walking past me to like just like open arms of like this warm city and this humid climate with this jungle around me. And it allowed me to do a lot of deep work. And I did a lot of releasing, and so did my partner. And one thing that happened in Mexico that I want to just point out is sacred union is important, but sacred union comes with releasing. deep releasing. You release with each other, but you also hold each other in support as you release. And sometimes you also like want to just punch them. But like, but it's because you're releasing these deep, old, indoctrinated ways. And for me, a lot of what I was releasing was self-worth, was like where I came from, and the fear of who I am now that I'm as my parents immigrated to America, the fear of being who I am and being accepted, and like being in Mexico and being accepted and open arms. And it was like not only that, but connecting with those who, my daughter's name is Luna, and when they would see her, it's such a beautiful Mayan community there. They'd say, Ishel, Ishel, which is the lunar goddess of Maya. And she has her own island, you know? And so it was beautiful that they would call her that. And they loved it. They loved her. They just thought she was this beautiful. And they're like, you have to take her to the island. So we did. And Luna definitely prefers Mexico to America. Just she likes the humid moisture of that region too. Like we have to have a humidifier on at all times. Like it's so dry in the Bay Area. It's not really that dry, but for her, it's like so dry.
Too much, too much.
But yeah, no, it was a beautiful experience, and it was intense. We went to. I have to tell you this story because this kind of explains to you the work I did there. I was doing a lot of like releasing of my generational stories, but my generational stories are many people's generational stories because we all experienced generationally the same thing as our families immigrated to America. And as like the Spaniards came in, it's the same kind of like
I'm going to ask to pause right
scrutiny.
here so that anyone listening can just give yourself a second to tap into wherever it was that your family left homelands to come here.
Mhm.
Because almost always, when we're dealing with any type of generational work or curses, it's when you left the home country that this thing comes in.
Yeah,
So, wherever your people are from, if you can just tap into that as we listen to Sabrina and allow
yeah.
yourself a release as well.
It's interesting too that you say that because it's where we leave that puts us at the most vulnerable state, that these types of energies and entities can connect to us, and then they connect to us generationally from that moment forward because we know not any other way than to pass it on to our children.
Mm,
And so that's what we're here for, right? If you want to know the real work of why you're here and I'm here and everybody who's listening is here, it's because it's enough is enough, and we got to just nip it in the bud and cut that off. Because we have these new children coming in that are, their DNA is so insanely advanced than us. They're so crystallized already that like um, they don't have time to deal with this bullshit. Like there's no other way to put it, but it's just a bunch of bullshit we keep passing on that we've got to clear out. So that's what I was called to do. I was called there to start clearing that out. And I went to, and I've been studying under the Mayan Wisdom Project. I've been studying a lot of the Mayan culture, and I highly recommend if anybody, and I know Andy has her own Mayan connection, but the Mayan Wisdom Project is amazing. They will teach you like the calendar and the ways and understanding because right now the Mayan elders agree that it's time to share the story of the beginnings and and the magic of the Mayan mysteries because it can be so helpful in this day and age to understand how they connected cosmically and physically, of all the different spiritual bodies, how they connected into the earth. Because it will be helpful for all of us to know that. So, highly recommend them. But as I was one of the things that really stuck with me was that Mayans um, didn't sacrifice. And when you go to these sacred Mayan spaces, the tour guides are telling these incredible stories of sacrifice. Oh, there was so many sacrifices. There was like blood, rivers of blood, like running down the stairs, and like the Mayans disappeared because they killed themselves off because they one of the stories was they polluted their cenotes and their drinking waters because they sacrifice so many people. And I'm like, they're so intelligent that they build these beautiful, like beautiful, like pyramids that correctly line up to the solstice and create a snake cruising down the side of the pyramid. But they aren't dumb enough to like
Yeah.
poison themselves and their entire
Kill themselves
drinking
off.
water. Anyhow, um, but I knew instantly the gnosis in me was just shifted when I got there. I got to Chichen Itza and it was like the story is wrong, and I know it. And as we were cruising through this tour, um, more and more of the locals were setting up their wares to sell. So it was like not one open space on the edge of the jungle surrounding this sacred place. There was not one open space that didn't have a stall where they were selling their gear, because this is the only way that they can make money is tourism. And this is how they do it, right? But this is a sacred space, like a truly sacred space. That's like there's this imbalance.
Yeah.
And so I instantly understood, because I'm very connected to the ocean too. So I'm connected to the trees, I'm connected to the ocean. I instantly understood by sitting there the imbalance that's happening with the tourism. Sargassum is not because of global warming.
No. It's fucking
Sargassum,
we're just gonna say sargasm sounds like sarcasm. It's not. It's the
it's
seaweed,
an algae.
the red
It's an
seaweed.
algae that blooms. It's incredibly fast the way it blooms,
It's so
but
mad.
there's nothing negative about it. The sargassum, because I connected to the spirit of it, is showing the imbalance.
Mm.
Just like our pain body, when we have an imbalance in our own physical body, Gaia has to show us imbalances in specific ways. Has nothing to do with like global warming or blah da 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 da. It has to do with the tourism imbalance and the way that the people are surviving there. These are people that should be connected to the earth, and now they're connected to just surviving,
Yeah.
because the imbalance of tourism, the greed, the lack of infrastructure. So that's what this
The
is, and that
eco
hits me.
hotels, you say?
Yeah, eco hotels, but really, like, what are we? What are we?
Yeah.
Look around us,
Yeah.
and that really hit me hard when I was there.
Mm.
And then my little being, Luna, she's like her own little existence. She's cruising along with us, as we're cruising through the pyramids and the pyramid, and then we get to this point where the tour guide is talking about um, onyx. Is it onyx? No, is it onyx or is it what's the other black?
Obsidian?
Obsidian. So
This is
sorry,
it. Chichen
obsidian
Itza?
blades. This is at Chichen Itza. So we're at a obsidian stall out, just like literally like the pyramid, and here's an obsidian stall. And he's telling us about like how they would, oh, this is a ceremonial blade, and da da da, and don't worry, we won't sacrifice you. And he points the blade to my little daughter. He's just joking. Everybody's like, you can tell he's just like trying to be funny. Um, but Luna was like,
No.
I'm gonna like literally lose my shit in a way that my parents have never seen before, because I no longer want to listen to this guy's stories. So I couldn't finish my tour because I'm in flow and I listen to my child, and I'm like, we can't be with him. So we had to like
Oh.
just wander Chichen Itza on our own and remember how we saw it on our own.
Mm.
And it actually was better. It was actually a better experience than listening to these
Bad stories.
story of, and you notice that in general, like everything is being invaded in this world, whether it's your cells from a virus or like a civilization, or everything is a war in this world. And I think we need to reframe it, because really, is your cell being invaded by a virus, or is it getting something from it? We don't know. But one cell, we are one cell on Gaia. We are one cell on this earth. And Gaia is one cell in the universe.
Mhm.
So how do we know what our one cell is doing when it's dancing with a virus? We don't know. And so for me, I just recognize that like we can't presuppose that they're attacking.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, we don't live in a
Maybe they're
yeah, don't live in the paradigm where this is us versus them, right? We're not
exactly. How
operating
do
from
they
that.
know? They're just existing and working together to try and keep this being as is, you know? So, but that's the truth for everything. And so I really think that a good way to keep them as savages is to make them warlike and murderous. And I really think like if we reframe it as like they're incredibly intelligent, they're connected to the cosmos and the stars, and their magic is beautiful and it's very connected to the earth and plane and many planes above and surrounding us that we could probably learn way more from them than what we're allowed to.
Can I say, as a white woman, so I understand the inherent trick of that, but I think the cartel is like the sargasm as well.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's this
it's I
energy
thank
that is
you.
like very antithetical to like what the sexual energy is here.
It's really cool that you brought that up. I'm not cool, like as in the cartel's cool, but I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because, there's these, and I don't really know this. I'm just from the energy that I get when I was like in this town at this OXXO, which is like a 7-Eleven, that like they own quite a bit. They own quite a bit, including, I imagine, those stores. That's just what I'm assuming. And at times it's symbiotic. I think at times it's symbiotic for the people because maybe
Protective.
the government isn't doing enough.
Huh.
And so we can't suppose that it's a negative experience. And at times it can be an imbalance. And I think you see that in the areas that are being more ravaged by that. And probably like, um, I can't tell you once where I had a bad avocado in Mexico, but I can tell you how many times a week I can have a bad avocado up here. And
Well,
that's,
and you know the cartel took over the avocados at one point
I
last year.
do. That's why
That
I'm bringing it up. And I love that whatever they're doing, they're providing perfect avocados for their people. Because I didn't have one bad avocado and I was buying them at like the OXXO.
yeah, and mangoes. I've never had a bad mango.
Never had a bad
Papaya,
mango.
right? Like by the time it gets here, those papayas just yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I think it's the same, there's a balance. Like there has to be negative and positive in flow. There has to be feminine and masculine in the flow and in balance for us to be able to like basically live in our truth. Like if you really want to know what manifestation is, it's being in balance and living your truth. That's manifestation. It all comes. It's all that's when they say, oh, to be magnetic you have to do la 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 la. It's like, yeah, you have to balance your masculine and your feminine. you have to be you have to live in a place of love and no fear, and then ching 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 ching,
Everything
you want to talk
flows.
about
Yeah.
magnetic.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think some places the cartel is in a good balance and some places it's out of balance, and the same thing with the tourism and the same thing with like, I mean, we can just go down the line for all of us. There's some
And
places
Sabrina,
where
can I
balance is
tell you
perfect.
that I have never been to Chichen Itza because the story or like a false memory of the brutality there. So Copa I can do, Tulum I can do, but and thank you, Uxmal. Like when I was in Uxmal, we had to wear masks while walking around the ruins. It was that phase of
Yeah,
mask
yeah,
time that like even if we are thousands of feet away from people, we would hear guards whistling at us to put our mask back up
yeah.
while we're walking outside. So and those were early days, people didn't know, so it's not
No, it's understandable, but it was intense in that region.
intense.
And
Well,
I would say too, it can be a control mechanism, and that's probably why, a fear and control again.
and they also
Um,
have a population that doesn't have access to the medical care that we do in other
mhm.
places. They don't know what this is, and if you've only got tourists who are coming in and don't know where they're from, you're protecting your people.
Yep, 100%. 100%. So Chichen Itza was intense. So I've learned that when I get sick, what we call sick, whether it be a fever or a cold or whatever, it's usually like I have to transmute some low energy and it's transmuting. And for me, I have a lot of throat chakra work that I do. And so for me, it comes through either as a fever or, through a respiratory release. Um, and when I got to Chichen Itza, that night I had a crazy fever and I don't know why. And it went away. And then I was fine. Like there was nothing else. Like it was the night that I got to Valladolid. I had chilled there and I was like, I could feel it. I could feel hot. And I was like, and I like look at my partner and he's like, are we releasing? Because he was feeling the same thing. And I was like, okay, basically, we just knew we had to be prepared.
Yeah.
Um, but what we were prepared for the next day at Chichen Itza was like the stories. I'm getting emotional. The stories, when you say a false memories are real. Like false memories is a real thing, and we have to recognize that like they can be so real that we don't want to break them, just like the Matrix, just like the world,
We're
that we live
attached
in. Like,
to a narrative or
and
to a version of things.
it's such a sacred, beautiful place that, and it's massive. It goes further down beneath that, like stories being told in unison and in mass around these on a daily basis is a spell to keep this region in this low vibration, and you see it through the town.
Wow.
And
If
so I
that
had to
story is being told to every fucking group who comes
every
through,
day,
then this is what we
hour
this
after
place.
hour.
And Uxmal was the same way, and I don't mean to interrupt, but Uxmal, where they're like, well, this is the nunnery. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? It's a cosmic university when you get into it, but the way that they were talking was so counter to my
Yeah.
experience and what was, yeah, okay. Chichen Itza. So yeah, the narrative of it creates its own force field
Yep.
of poverty and of pain and suffering.
And so it's important for us to go and to envision it in its truth.
Oh, great. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Um, it doesn't, thank you. Yes, it makes sense. And I'm wondering whether you want to lead us in an activation of that or whether I will do that later. But I can put up some graphics and we can just kind of reset that Chichen Itza with some guided.
I don't know if I'd be able to, if I'd be good at it. You're so great at the
You're full of
activation.
shit. I haven't been there though. Like I don't have
I
that.
know. Hold on, let me just go within and see what I can do. Oh man, it just makes me so sad.
Thank you. As you're calling that in, I'm just going to remind everybody we're going to be moving into an activation then. Please, no driving. Do what you need to ground yourself, to bring yourself into your body safely to receive and to participate through an open heart of love.
Okay. I have words coming through, so beneath the great pyramid of Chichen Itza is a cenote. And a cenote, if you're not certain what this is, visualize this beautiful pool of fresh water in a beautiful cavern of limestone. Um, and I ask you to just go into this sacred womb of water. Just pull your body down into it. It's very cooling and cleansing. And then I want you to imagine it's right at the center, at the base of this beautiful pyramid. And I want you to imagine this beautiful cosmic energy flowing from the top of the pyramid down through the many layers of the pyramid, down into the water, activating the water and surrounding you like a womb. And as you sit in this beautiful water, like you're in this womb, this beautiful cosmic womb, you know that you're about to be birthed anew, and you're going to remember the beauty of this place without the blood, without the war, or without any thoughts in your mind of being like the conquest that happened there. You're going to wake up and release, walk out of this beautiful cenote, staying in this cave beneath the pyramid, and know that you've reimagined it as it should be. This beacon to the stars to connect you and your people to the seasons so that you can be prosperous, so that you can grow food, so that you can play a ball game and celebrate together in love and in joy. Elevate yourself to the top of the pyramid and look up at the stars. It's a beautiful night sky with a full moon. Just breathe in the cool jungle air. And then find yourself back in your body. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. I'm not ready to come back. Give me one more minute. Um, it's so powerful, Sabrina. So, as you guys go through this, like, yes, we can watch Graham Hancock and be like, oh, yeah, there's memories. You can also go and have your own and not being there because we do work on energetic planes. I won't share my experience of what just happened, but I'll be curious to hear about y'all's and encourage you to share and recognize and perhaps even reclaiming the places from your own lineage. I had that experience at Newgrange in Ireland where the story of what they were telling me didn't at all match my experience. I'm like, what the fuck are y'all? Like, this is clearly a
Yeah.
singing bowl. Like, do you guys not know that this is like built for acoustics here? The stories that they tell are to disconnect us from memory
Mm-hmm.
and to keep in mechanisms of control and power.
And that's why it's important to keep telling these stories. That's what I love about Matthias de Stefano is his stories are truth. We know it. We feel it. It resonates in us as like, yes, I remember. I remember the alphabet that you speak of. I remember the words you're saying. I don't know how. I just do. But if we don't tell those stories and agree with them and know that they're true, we won't. We will never go back to this the we will never be able to appreciate what surrounds us in its truth, because I mean it's not like they did it on purpose. They just don't remember,
I don't
and
remember.
they have to make up stories and then they stick to them, you know.
Well, it's too dangerous to not stick to them because then it
Mm-hmm.
unravels the fabric of what people believe. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's we you know, you see this with the stories of the Essenes versus the stories in the Bible. You know, the stories of the Essenes are, this beautiful group of people that were greatly connected to technology and understanding that's ancient, like incredibly ancient knowledge. Um, I believe the blue aliens and the giants
Mm.
worked with them. And so these are the people that taught Jesus, Yeshua. And these are,
These are the
and
people who
so
prepared for Jesus and Yeshua for him.
and prepared for Jesus and Yeshua and sent him to the Druids, sent him to the Egyptians to learn more of the mysteries. And so we can learn their beautiful stories, or we can stick with what the Bible says. You
Mm.
know, it's like, and not look at it as the beautiful metaphor that the Bible holds many beautiful metaphors, like and that we can learn from. So, but it's like we have to realize that there's more knowledge out there that's just as genuine and beautiful that we can pull from.
As you said that
Um,
about the Bible, what I heard is like it's a tome of morality, right? They're
mhm,
telling us how to behave. They
mhm.
aren't actually passing on a history of anything.
One of the things that really stands out to me is the golden rule was removed from the Ten Commandments, and the golden rule is literally just to treat
Be
others
kind.
as you would treat yourself.
Yeah, just come from
Why would
love.
you remove that?
Well, and then Jesus has to come and like teach us that again, right? In a
Yeah.
horrific.
And so it's like there's nothing wrong with understanding the different types of knowledge that's out there, but to pick and choose from it is where we have folly falls upon us.
Yeah.
But to understand all of it, because it's all in here, it's all in all these cells. Um, to understand all of it is a beautiful thing because then we have this more beautiful like understanding of like how unique we are.
As you just pointed to your head, like what I saw is like the only thing that they actually control is this. They control our
Yeah.
mind, they control our thoughts. They think that they have shaped them or limited them in some way through our indoctrination in schools and churches, etc.
Mhm.
But they haven't actually gotten to a heart or to the cells, as you said. Like it's just
No,
so clear that our sovereignty is everywhere, and this is the only thing. And that's where fear is for the most part. Fear is a thought. Fear is not an actual lived experience of like, "Ugh, people are scary. I shouldn't." Um,
that's even more of a better description of what they have control over. They don't really have control even of your mind. They have control of the fear lever in your mind.
mm,
How to pull it, how to twist it. What is that fear lever going to do? Um, you know, how much do we need to pull this fear lever on these things? Like, you know, I live in the South Bay and there was like a big storm coming through. And if you were to watch the news, you would think the world is going to die and end from this storm. I think they described it as brutal. It was a brutal. It will be the most brutal storm we've experienced in a long time, and nothing that Gaia does is brutal. Like it's wonderful and magnificent in its destruction, but it's not brutal. And the trees, they stretched their furthest they could stretch, you know, in the wind, and some trees fell, and some mountains slid, and some shifts happened last night, and some shifts will continue to happen. But if we keep framing it as like
punishing,
this punishment,
scary.
that's how they tweak it. Now you're so worried, like, what if the tree falls and hits my house and my house is ruined? And then what am I going to do? Or if you could just like
Well,
sit,
and they've done that with, I'll say the one that I watched that was very, entertaining. Butter. Like, there's going to be a butter shortage, and everybody like stocks up, and I'm like, y'all are just making shit up at this point in time, right? Like, come on,
is there
shortage.
going to be a heavy is there going to be a heavy cream shortage? Because you know we could just make butter with like a mixer and heavy cream.
No. So what I want to say is like when they put into the collective consciousness, it's going to be brutal. Then forces of weather and nature respond to
Oh,
this
we
much energy.
manifested this
Yeah.
collectively.
Yep.
Yeah, we manifested so hardcore collectively, we forget the spell work that's being done as they verbalize the brutality of a weather of a weather
Yep.
a span of weather, and then everybody talks about it.
Hmm.
And this is and I don't want to get controversial here, but this is
Oh, we're
how
way past that point. Are you fucking kidding me? You're so cute.
but this is how we can deeply manifest a deep response to sickness is just like the constant fear, the reaffirmation of fear, the reaffirmation of the symptoms,
What's
the
the antidote?
reaffirmation of pardon.
What's the antidote to that?
um well to not be afraid of it, but how do you not be afraid of it? Fear is a lie. You've heard this many times. Fear is a lie. Fear is the biggest liar. Like there's literally your body is a universe. We've talked about this. So I know, I know that if I get a tickle in my throat, how to clear it because I'm not afraid of it. And I know what it's telling me. It's either telling me I need to speak, it's telling me I need to release, and I have to listen and I have to sit with it and I have to understand why. And do I surrender to it? Or I'm like, no, you know what? Sorry, I'm not going to surrender to you right now. I got a lot of shit on my plate right now. I can't surrender to this, but let's release it together. Let's get it out of here. Um, and that is a hard place to get, but the way that we get there is really working on a day-to-day basis with fear. Like, why am I afraid to catch this cold? And why am I posting blame on this cold of that little boy who licked the arm post that I touched? Like, what I have to do is take responsibility for my body
Mm.
and my actions and my surroundings. And I need to stop posting blame on everything around me. And also, I need to stop seeking outside of me to some expert to tell me what's wrong with me because, again, words are spells. So if I'm like, hey, I got this pain right here, and I go and see an expert, and they're like, oh, you know what? Your tendon is stretched. Now my tendon is stretched. And now I'm going through the whole healing process of fixing my tendon. Whereas, like, maybe I should have thought, why is it hurting here? And that's where it's kind of controversial where we're talking because why is it hurting here?
Why is it hurting?
Um,
Not
and
what
what
do I
am I
need to do to
doing?
fix it? Because that's usually where we go, especially as, in this
Yeah.
practice of self-healing. What do I need to do to make it better? And it's not, it's already perfect. And what is it trying to convey? I think is the beauty of what.
There's absolutely nothing to fix in our body. You are correct. Everything, our body is so perfect. Our body is so perfect. How it is, how it settles into its weight ratio naturally. Some of us are super skinny and some of us are super overweight. And that's just how it is. It has nothing to do with obsessive eating or da 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 da. Like all these things you're told you're wrong. Like this is the thing that I get really fired up about. Um, you can diagnose your child on the autistic spectrum. That's totally fine if that makes you feel safe. But there's nothing wrong with your child, no matter what level they're at, even if they come here with like a lot going on. There's nothing wrong with them. They are perfect as they are. We had to get to this space.
Well, and
That's what we
I'll
have to
say
get
that
to.
I'm on, we're having some challenges with my lovely 15-year-old. Challenges that look like not really giving a shit in school and not really showing up for school. The lying
Mm-hmm.
about it, different issue. But as I was really bothered by this and deeply troubled by this, one of my girlfriends reached out and she's like, Andy, you remember that you like raised her for 9 years in Waldorf, right? You remember that you raised her to keep an open heart and an open soul. And now she is in an institution that is like, you should be doing this. And she's like, fuck that. Why
And
should I
there's
be?
something wrong with you if you don't do this.
Right.
And
And
there's nothing wrong with these kids. And our kids nowadays, they don't, there's nothing wrong with them. Like they're not challenged at school, then they're not challenged at school. Like who are we to be like, oh, there's something wrong with you that you're not engaging with your teacher and turning your homework in? What's wrong with you? Like nothing.
nothing. I don't want to do
Like they
homework. It
just
seems stupid.
don't care. And that's okay. There's other things that they do care passionately about that they're really good at. What if they're really good at making videos? What if they're really good at like um, producing music? What if they're really good at like analytics of like something, really good at coding? Like anything that's like on a device, anything that's like not normal, people get so nervous about, oh, they should be in sports. They should be excelling in all of their classes. Like, no, man. Like, we have to, we tell ourselves as in the spiritual community, be kind to ourselves and forgive ourselves. And we have to be that way with our children because, like, hey, man, maybe they're just not good at math.
Yeah.
And they're being told and they're being called out all day long that they're not good at math at school and they don't need to come home. Who
And
cares?
right.
Is it the end of the world or is it you that feel like you failed?
Yeah.
That's the problem. You didn't fail
Well, Sabrina,
because
I need to pay you for today's time because you've awesome. What great therapy you've given to me today too.
but it's very like we need to it's true, you know, we need to like hold these children and love them um and let them be. Stop forcing them into these freaking boxes so that the schools can get more money because they pass these tests.
Yeah. No, I
Like
opted her
another
out of all
monetization.
tests, and we had some issues. I
Good.
opted her out of all tests, and then they put her in remedial reading, and they're like, "Well, we don't know what her test scores are, so we think she needs help." And I'm like, "I opted her out, and if your only fucking metric for how she's doing is this test that I'm telling you you can go suck your own dick about, You should
That's,
communicate that to
thank
me.
you.
Like, we've got issues here. Like, you're looking at that as a standard of like what she is, and I'm telling you, like, I don't do stand.
My
I'm not interested in
a
that.
dear friend of mine, he's a genius, like literally a genius. Like he's very introvert. He's got a lot of like issues. He's a genius. Um, he can't pass a test to save his life, but that guy can code his way out of a hole, man. I've never seen anybody be, he can code, he can create the most incredible 3D art. Um, he's doing fine as an adult, but he couldn't pass his way through testing. He couldn't do it. He couldn't get his coding degree, and he's a better coder than I've ever seen any of the coders I've worked with. And I work in e-commerce, so I've devved with a lot of people. And he just couldn't get his degree because he couldn't pass the test, and he felt that he was a failure
Yeah.
because that's what society tells you. And you know what? He's not a failure. He's
Oh.
making an excellent amount of money and an excellent living doing what he loves. He's
And
not
I
a
just want
failure.
to like highlight that thing right there, what society tells you. Like that's kind of what we've been talking about all day today is
Yeah.
with Chichen Itza, you believe it's what society tells you. With Jesus and Magdalene, it's what society tells. Like there's been so much
Mm-hmm.
control of
The
the narrative that is now breaking because we're having our own experiences, and we encourage wildly and radically your experiences. Because anytime that you go to a book, and I watch this with people who are either new in their awakening or really like they're seeking in that phase, they're reading all of the other books and I'm like, you're just reading about other people's fucking channeled experiences. That doesn't mean that it's true. And I'll even say that with crystals, and I get even
mm,
kind of frustrated with astrology at some points, and I'm like,
yeah.
it's information, which is helpful, but if we look at it as being like finite or definitive in some way, we're problematic because it's just what somebody else remembered that you might remember differently.
I think about and that's very true. Like astrology is a good example of that. Like some people live and die by astrology, but they live and die by astrology based on what? Because Babylonian stars are the correct stars if you really want to be real. So you're living and dying by a Gregorian
System.
setup,
Yep.
and it's a system that was put in place. But like all systems are put in place, so it's like you can live and die. But if you go to like an older star, hello, suddenly I'm a freaking Scorpio. What happened? You know what I mean? Like there's so much. There's so much. It's a beat. Look, the planets they move and they affect us because we are 70% water and we're spiritual and they
And we're from there.
move.
Like
We're
they're
from there and they're beautiful and they tell us stories. We see from monument to monument to monument how much we revere these beautiful planets as they move across our sky. But that doesn't mean that like on May 8th, because there's a trine or like a square, you're gonna have like the shittiest day ever. It's possible
and
if
Mercury
you let it
retrograde.
be.
Like we can also recognize, like yes, there might be a little bit of an influence that yeah, let's we could
Yeah.
get into rabbit holes. But what I
We
want
have
to
like a four retrogrades a year. Come on.
encourage is to have your own experiences with these things
Mhm.
and to ask for your own memories to be restored rather than reading what somebody else has remembered and told you that it is,
Yeah.
because that's it's not a true pathway.
And that's really like the cure all of fear is to trust you and to stop seeking outward answers. It was a really hard period of my awakening where I couldn't seek a guru. I couldn't go out and talk to somebody because I wasn't allowing myself on purpose because I needed to trust this body. And to trust this body, I had to listen and not second guess. And when you get to a place where you can listen and not second guess, then fear is no longer an issue because you're not afraid of how your body's reacting to certain things. You're not afraid when you have a headache. You're not afraid when you feel off or
Hmm.
you have a low day because you know what it is. You're releasing. You did a ritual the night before. Now you're at the releasing part. You were at the high part of the glory of what it is that you're doing with
Now
your
you're in the fucking
ancestry.
cenote.
And now you're releasing, and you have to. These dark nights of the souls come quick and more and more as you move along your path because you're just releasing. And sometimes you're not even releasing for you. Like a lot of the times I'm releasing for the collective and not in a negative way, in a very positive way, because my your experience is everybody's experience. And so if I release, it releases. Um, and so, yeah, the story of the trip to Mexico was a complete surrender so that I can get to a place where fear no longer exists in my in any cellular anything. Um, I don't know if we can test that out if like a if like a T-Rex was to run in here, if I'd like pop into like fight or flight, but I'm not afraid of human interaction any longer. And I encourage that I encourage many of the listeners to understand that like you serve just by being, even just talking to a homeless person is a way to serve because you've shifted their energy by just asking them how they are and what their name is. And it's just simple things like that is how we can serve and elevate the vibration. And that's what Yeshua was teaching us was how to find love amongst us and within us. Like the coming of Christ is within us, the Christed energy. It's like not some special savior. It's us. We are the saviors. We save ourselves. And in saving ourselves and caring about ourselves, even though that seems selfish, we're actually saving everybody else. You
It's a
know,
radical
like, am I?
paradigm that is shifting,
Mhm.
and that I've played with the idea of like self-centered. Like I want to bring back self-centered because that would change a whole lot if we weren't so concerned with other people. Take care of
Big
yourself, know
time.
what this is, show up in love, be kind, be decent, and don't believe what you're being told. Have your own experience with it. And the gloriousness of this era of awakening that I think we're in, our own experiences matter and we have access to these things. It's not like nothing is being kept from us. The universe wants to be in living relationship with us. The trees want us to love it. Everything in this living universe is living in the same cellular way that we are, that wants to engage in more love. So it's only when we are in a place of fear that we have pulled ourselves or retracted from the ability to have those engagements, encounters, and experiences that we're
Yeah,
really in trouble.
exactly. Yeah, I love that. I think that's perfect. That's just a reminder of you're sitting with your intuition and feeling that fear. Feel what it feels like in your body. It never feels good.
Mm-mm.
And like release it
Yeah.
because it's not true. And I learned this because I suffered from severe anxiety, debilitating anxiety growing up. And I would convince myself very much so that I was dying, that I was going to have a heart attack or I was having a heart attack. And I believed it. Um, but it was anxiety. And the anxiety was built upon from fear, from like indoctrination, da 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 da, right? If you can make yourself believe that you're having a heart attack,
Yeah.
truly believe you're having a heart attack, um, then you realize the power of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And your mind is not truth, your heart is truth.
Angsa.
So,
Mhm. Anything else you'd like to share that hasn't come up yet today? I'm a little bit curious about your experience with Thoth through that last round of the Akashic. I don't know if that's too
mm,
personal, but
I'd
I
love to
know
share.
that Thoth kind of called you back in a way that I was delighted by.
Yeah, so I'd said earlier that I was like on this journey of not being able to connect in. I had to very much be sitting with myself. And I just popped back onto the map when activation was gonna be starting. So I was like so excited that it
I was so
happened to
excited.
happen that way. And it came through as me reconnecting. Oh, I had to tell you this. Can I tell you something really quick? I don't know what our timing is, but you have to hear this.
No, I
Here's
asked.
how it here's how it happened. Um, I had Luna in 2020. Crazy birth, beautiful birth, miracle baby. Not miracle baby like, oh, she's a miracle baby, but I mean, she's just a miracle because we all are miracles. But anyhow, have Luna. And I'm like, again, deathly afraid because they tell you you're going to get pregnant. So I'm like all afraid. I don't want to have another baby. I just had one. So what do? Birth control contraption goes in. Don't think anything of it. I've had it before. I don't think anything of it. I put it in. Anyways, it's giving me hell from the time I get it put in until the time I get it taken out. But I don't realize it's that because I keep telling my doctor and they're like, oh, it's all these other things. Stopping to like go to the doctor and like listening to myself. And I'm like, it's the contraption. I'm taking it out. So I take it out and I take it out and I'm sitting in my office. This is my office. I'm sitting here in my office and it's like a straight up dose download cosmic. I've never had, people talk about this. I've never had this. This is my first time. It's the next day. So I took it out the next day. And it was like, and you're back online. And I was like, oh,
Shit.
shit.
Oh shit.
The power of fear
Hmm.
is so important to recognize because had I not released the fear that I would have another baby and that I wouldn't have the knowledge to follow my cycle, something that we've been doing. What did we do before birth control? We had to follow our cycles. We had a lot of kids because we had farms to tend, but we also followed our cycles.
We knew what our body was doing and when. Yes.
Exactly. So now I've got, I follow my cycle. I'm all natural. I have no hormones in me. Both came through strongly and I connected. And he said, it's time to reconnect. And I literally texted Andy that moment. And you just happened to say, yeah, we're going to do another Akash round. Mm-hmm.
Come on.
It's crazy. And then it was beautiful because I needed that connection because Thoth came through. So Thoth has many different iterations, as we know. He's the all father, almost like Odin. He's so ancient.
Odin just snarled at that. Fuck off, man.
I know Odin's. When I said that, I was like, Odin's not gonna like that. I said,
Odin's got an
um,
ego in a way that Thoth does not.
no, Thoth is so he came through as Hermes Trismegistus for me, and I was like, what the hell? This is so weird. And I wanted to share that because I think it's important for all of us to know that like our ascended masters have many iterations and they come through, as do our spirit guides, in certain iterations that are important for us at those times. And for me, um, sacred geometry just came online for me this year. Or that's not this year, it's 2023, 2022. At the end of 2022, sacred geometry came in a big way for me. I'm starting to sing tone, and when I sing in tone, I sing in tone in sacred geometry. Um, and so I didn't do that until sacred geometry pops into my life. And then Thoth comes through as Hermes. And it was really important because in a way, he's like the alchemist in a way. Like he's showing me how to alchemize sound to shape, to
Yeah.
form. So it's something I can share because it's important for all of us to know that like if we feel like there's a wall, maybe there's a different version that needs to come through and teach us because we get comfortable. I get comfortable with
What we
Akash
think.
Thoth,
Well, and cozy, right?
who's
Like, oh, they're my
yeah,
friend and I know them.
this is I know, and like I don't know this man who just walked through, who's like sitting in my sacred space. Who is this? But handing me my sacred keys that I know are mine that nobody else has. So I know that this is a new relationship I need that I have to trust, and it expanded me to a point where like I've never made music in my life, and I have a MIDI recorder and keyboard, and I'm just making music now. I'll have to share some, but
That
it's
was, you saw
very
my mouth opening for that. Like, will you share some?
yeah, it's very at the beginnings. This only happened. I think we started in October. Did we start in
September. Yeah, we
October?
started on Equinox.
September. And so I really didn't get the keys to making music until November, end of November, beginning of December. Um, and um, my sacred union partner, he's a drummer and he plays the guitar. And but that's not the kind of we're not we can make music together, which is important, but it's like I have to make my own music.
You are your own artist.
And so I'm just learning how to do that. I don't know how to do it. I'm learning all about MIDI. I've got a nice laptop.
I can't wait to hear Sabrina.
Yeah, it's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be tones, but like probably like sacred beats. So it's gonna be more dance, beautiful. That's gonna be the style. I'll share some with everybody. I'm gonna start sharing it on my Insta when I get a chance.
You want
But
to tell us what your Insta is for anyone who might want to keep up with Sabrina?
yeah, I'm on at Mysteries Within, and I don't know if I have an underscore. You guys mind if I check
No,
while
I can also just find that out. Mysteries Within.
yeah.
We will
I'll put it, we
put a
can put
link
it
to
in.
it.
But Mysteries Within is my Insta, and it's just my musings and pretty soon my music. So
And you and your musings and your music. From the first time I ever saw you do a healing on someone, that was what, 2019 maybe we did an apprenticeship?
beginning of 2020,
Shit.
I know almost 2 years or almost 3 years ago.
And I remember I was blessed enough that I've gotten to hang out with you a few times, IRL, flesh to flesh, and
Yes.
watching you do healings and like the way that shit came through for you and what you channeled, like sister, pure power, pure love, purely you. Because even at that point in time, you weren't studying anything. Thanks for
Yeah,
posting that.
that's one thing, like, and thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Healing is like to do a healing session is like one of my greatest joys. And people that come to me, like I don't go out and perform them on purpose. They just have, it's like as needed as it comes through. I feel it and I know it. But um, I'm not like allowed to associate it with anything, but just to channel it through. And it was really hard for me at the beginning when to accept it. Does that make sense? To accept what was coming through as okay because it didn't come from any lineage, because it just literally just came from hollow
It's
bone,
just yours.
you know. Yeah. And it was what it was. And it is what it is. It's mostly tone and hands and energy work and energy weaving energy.
I
What
feel
I
that. Yeah,
do.
as soon as you talk, my hands activate.
Yeah, mine too.
Oh yeah, I feel that.
I'm like, oh, it's sweaty.
Okay, yep,
It's like
there's
the
all that
Akash
Akka
gets
getting turned on. Whew, yeah. And the downloads when you were talking about Thoth and, or I guess Hermes. I like to do the Hermes at times, like
I
Hermes.
know he was like Hermes.
Yeah, very
You know
French.
what's so interesting? That was like my favorite scent. Hermes had a scent that I just loved. It was like something gold, something I can't remember. And I remember I used to always wear it. And so it's funny that he came through. I'm like,
You
oh,
have some?
you're just
Well,
telling
you
me
should
in a
probably
scent.
get some, please.
I know. I wonder if they still make it. I'm sure they do. It was a really good smell.
Yeah, as soon as you started talking, like downloads activate on me. So let me just close out by telling you guys that we do activate off of each other. And at times that gets a little tricky when you're in containers or working with groups because we have been trained and our ego says, that's mine. Really, none of it is yours. And if you can be a facilitator for someone else's activation and memory and that blessing, it's kind of what we're all here for is that we turn each other on, we turn each other's keys on, and
Yeah, we do.
that isn't you taking from anybody. It's whatever it does to bring you to yours. There's more obvious ways that you are stealing or indoctrinating or taking from indigenous, but for the most part, those of us who are practicing these ways, yeah, we'll fucking feel off of each other, and that's really beautiful and something that we shouldn't judge so we shouldn't respond to so weirdly. Of course we'll activate off of each
Yeah.
and yeah.
It's also like the group high that starts flowing is like, you start just sort of like feeling what other people are feeling and working with each other and working off of each other. It's more powerful. Like we're community, we're one. We have to
And if
remember
one of
that.
us starts remembering, then it opens up the pathways for others to remember as well. So as long as we're not going out there trying to be Mateus and singing the songs that he is and saying that they're ours, that's where you'd have a fucking problem, right? But
Hmm.
otherwise, we can listen to Mateus. We're like, oh, I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it the 11:11 that he did? I think I listened all day long. Like I could
Oh
not
God.
stop.
I know.
Um, and most recently, Marilyn sent me the sounds of the ice cracking in the Nordic, and I'm
Mm.
listening to that nonstop. I played it in the last podcast.
Oh, I
Like,
wouldn't listen to
I'll
that.
send it to you.
You know, it's powerful what we do as a collective. I think of like, and I know this is just silly, but like Argentina won the World Cup in Qatar, which is in the Middle East, which is near Egypt, and all the work he did was to like swap the two. And I just think of that. He didn't even mention it. And I'm just like, but do you see like how crazy is that? You know, like it's like Qatar is like right across the like there's like a water inlet in Egypt. It's like interesting.
but he'll talk about
Um,
Aaron Carter in a way where I'm like, fucking Aaron Carter.
Hey, but that it's
Bless
a
that
good
soul.
lesson to recognize that all of us are so connected that we've had lifetimes, even with people that we might not even like Aaron Carter, right? Let's just like if we want to, we
I,
still have
I,
had these loving moments with these people.
I have I have dreams probably about once or twice a month about this one famous musician. And it's that when I've gone back into past lives, I'm like, what? Because I feel like a fucking fangirl. Like it's gross. But if I go back, I'm like, oh no, there's lots of past lives. And my rule is like, if you want to come through in this life, you come to me. I don't come to you because that's where it gets
Hmm.
a little tricky. Um, but yeah, like the level of intimacy that we have in dream, not sex. I don't think we've ever had sex in a dream, but like there will be things that I dream about that I then see in his feed online where I'm like, yeah, that's not just me tapping in. It's lots of overlap because we've all lived very rich tapestries of life and experiences and pasts and histories and futures and
Oh yeah.
potentialities and parallel lives and holy. So, Sabrina, I'm so grateful that in this life we got to find each other again,
Me
and
too.
whatever other lives we get to do, and without being, I call your daughter my goddaughter. I don't
Hmm.
mean to claim that in some ways, but like I know that little soul so very. I love her. So
She's
thanks for
incredible.
bringing her through to be a part of this again too.
Thanks, thanks her. She's the one who decided to come on through.
Sure, love you, Luna.
I wish us the best.
Uh, that,
Thank
that
you,
was
Andy.
that was trickier for me whenever I was pregnant, feeling like I was just the vessel for this thing. I got a little pissed. So thank you for being a worthy.
That's your that's your little small self being like, but I'm more than a vessel.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And then your higher self is like, no, dude, you're just a
No,
vessel.
just a portal moving some shit through. Mm-hmm.
Get used to it. It's what you're doing for the rest of your life.
Thank you, Mama. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too. Bye.